Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Big Blend Radio. You know, every first Monday, we get to chat with military historian and author Mike Guardia. He is an award-winning author, as I said, military historian, and a U.S. Army veteran. He was named the Author of the Year in 2021 by the Military Writers Society of America. And his latest books out of, oh gosh, it's over 20. I think it's 25. I can't keep up with him. But his latest books are Coyote Recon, The Forgotten Wars of Colonel J.D. Vanderpool. This is a cool story. You need to get it. And also The Combat Diaries, True Stories from the Frontlines of World War II. You can go to Amazon, but also go right to MikeGuardia.com. And he's joining us today to talk about Irish history, Irish Americans. How did they get here? Why did they come here? And maybe we will talk about potatoes and the lack of potatoes. So welcome to the show. Mike, how are you?
Hey, ladies, I'm doing well. Always a pleasure to be here.
Hey, this is cool. We're going to talk about something different. Normally, we're talking about battle strategies and blowing people up and things, you know. That sounds bad, but it's true. But today we're talking about Irish Americans maybe you are talking about things blowing up. But Irish American history, and that's something you chose. So I first want to go to, why did you want to talk about Irish American history? What intrigued you to talk? I know it's Irish American History Month, but still, what was it that led you to this choice of topic today?
All righty. Well, let's see. I think it was a lot of things. I mean, to start off with, I mean, it is the month that we celebrate Irish Americans and that we celebrate Irish heritage, you know, and then of course there's the ever-present St. Paddy's Day, St. Patrick being the patron saint of Ireland. And one of the things that they credit St. Patrick with doing is expelling all of the snakes from Ireland. And that is why today Ireland is one of the few places in the world that does not have a native snake population. And not only that, really just reflecting on all of the contributions that Irish Americans have made to our society, that they've made throughout history, and really just the story of how they overcame a lot of adversity, and how it's a story that you wouldn't expect to have the twist that it does, but it's a story that we can all take a lesson from, and it's also a story to highlight that, you know, even if you think the odds are stacked in your favor, there could be some things that come out of left field that make your life and your journey through life exceptionally difficult.
No kidding.
Well, you know,
to say.
Well, this is interesting
seriously.
Too. When you think about when things get really tough like that, and you think also about, you know, why we had the world wars, right?
Right.
You know, real terrible things happening, you know, and how people choose to survive when you could say, I'm throwing the towel in, and it's that bad. How prisoners of war choose to live through something so terrible. What do you think that is that gets people to just keep fighting for life when you could say, like, you know, everything's running downhill, I don't see the light of day? How do we keep persevering forward? What do you think it is? Like, through all the research you've done, and how many books? 25? Is it 25 books?
It is.
Oh my God, you're making me old. I love it. I love it though. But what is it through all of this that you think makes people move forward?
Well, I think it's a few things. One is that you really have to know what you're fighting for. And two, there's always the promise of something, even if it's just a vague concept that you have, the promise of something greater that's going to come on the tail end of it, whether it's really just trying to get back home to your loved ones, whether it's, you know, just wanting to be a survivor, or whether it's, you know, telling yourself, okay, what I'm doing has a purpose that goes beyond myself and even goes beyond the source of my torment at the moment. Yeah, I think when you take those things together, and I know that they're pretty broad strokes, but when you take them all together, those are really what motivate the human spirit to endure. And it's funny you should mention that because that reminds me of an anecdote I heard from one of the veterans I interviewed for The Fires of Babylon. It was that book on Eagle Troop and the Battle of
Mhm.
73 Easting. Well, one of the key players in that book was a gentleman named Chris Hedenskog, and he was this young 19-year-old private first class in the Gulf War. And, his first experience to the ravages of war was happening at such a young age. And one of the stories that he told me, one of the many stories he told that really sticks out in my mind, is when he saw some of the wounded Iraqi soldiers, even those who were fatally wounded, seeing the resilience they had to try to just
Mm.
stay alive, either whether it was trying to hold themselves upright or, crawl out of some earthenwork bunkers, with literally half of their bodies missing. He said, Mike, what it reminded me of was a lot of the bucks and the wild game that I used to hunt in Colorado. And he said, you can have an animal like a 10-point buck or even a mountain goat. You can target the animal and you can shoot it through what would be a critical organ, and you'd be surprised how long that animal will try to hold on to dear life just to survive. And if I'm remembering the story correctly, I think it was a buck that he and either his friend or his father were hunting, and one of the rifle bullets like hit this buck pretty much directly through the heart, what would have been an instant fatal kill, but that this animal, crawled on for at least a good 30 yards up a very steep slope of a hill or a mountaintop before it finally expired. And you just said that you know that you're doing this to feed yourself and feed your family, but you can't help but admire the resiliency of an animal to hold on to life, or to try to hold on to life that long, to even where it has a fatal wound, to still hold on and not only pull itself forward but pull itself up what is a very treacherous steep incline.
Mm. And that's why
You
we
know,
have to
my
do all we can to protect
mm,
animals. Sorry.
no, but
It's true
my
though.
grandmother used to say that the beginning of life started with spirit,
Mm,
and that you need spirit to continue life, and you need spirits to enjoy life.
well, no, but that's funny. Yeah. But
Well,
Mike,
she was a funny little British
yeah,
lady,
she was.
but
She was awesome.
but and she's only 4'9", British lady, and she used to put her hands on her hips when anybody crossed her way of thinking. She'd put her hands on her hip and say, "Now that's not true,"
Mm,
or there's a better way, or that you need to stop and think about this. And so when I look back in history at some things, I can see we used to call her Nana.
mm,
I think that's a British thing where you call your grandmother Nana. I don't know, but that's what we called her, Nana. And I can see her in certain, like right now, I'm reading a historic novel about Ireland, and I see Nana all over it because we're talking about in the novel about the British and the Irish and how
mm,
they came to separate. And there is a thing, there's certain personalities, I think, that are handed down,
mm.
like you
Traits.
inherit from your ancestors, not all from one ancestor, you inherit things from your ancestors. And I think that's really how history is born. It's like
Mm,
history is what people do and why they do it. But I think it comes from how you were born, what you were given in your genes, and what made you you to a certain point, and then how you make the rest of yourself. Like part of you is how you're born with genes from your ancestors, and then the second part is what did you do with it?
mm.
If that makes sense at all.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, it does.
Mm.
Well, going back to the Irish, I mean, when you think about there was the potato famine, there was so much in history, right, in Ireland, and it's
They had to
still
get
kind of
through
you
so
know,
much.
it's so divided. I mean, you think about Northern Ireland too now, right? And so there's a lot of religious difference. I mean, it's wild how we can put up lines as human beings. But then you think about that resiliency, Mike, I was talking about that, why is it that we fight so hard to live, right? And you think about people coming in on the Mayflower. I mean, that wasn't an easy ride. That's not like going on a cruise on Carnival Cruise Lines and Princess Cruises and or Viking. That's not how it is. The Mayflower wasn't like that, and so I don't think Irish came in on the Mayflower, right? The English did, and then they went to Amsterdam and Holland and came here, right? So the Irish coming here, that was different, wasn't it? Or did they come in on the Mayflower?
So the big wave of Irish immigrants that we got here in America was actually attributed to the potato famine of the early 1800s.
Yeah.
Now, of course, we had Irishmen who lived in America before that, but the biggest wave that you saw came as the result of the potato blight. And it's odd that a famine would precipitate a mass migration to America, and the story takes an interesting twist because when the Irish came over here, they were thinking to themselves, okay, well, we have a lot in common with the Americans. We're actually kindred spirits because we both hate the British.
Yeah.
You know,
Sure.
we've had a very rocky relationship with the British for a number of years now at this point, and we can identify with the Americans as our kindred spirits, and I'm sure that we will be welcomed with open arms. And you know, when you think about it, I guess in the most logical sense of the construct, it makes sense. I mean, you would expect them to be welcomed with open arms because, I mean, they are ethnically white just like us. And I'm saying us in the collective sense as, what the predominant prevailing view of America was at the time. And they share a common language, but the reception wasn't the warm welcome that they were hoping for, because when they got off the boat, uh, America at large was looking at the Irish population and telling themselves, okay, well, yeah, they're white, but they're kind of off-white. A lot of them have red hair, they talk
Weird.
funny, and they're all Catholic.
Yeah, see, that's a big
they're saying, okay, well, if they're Catholic, they must be agents for the Pope. They must be here to cause trouble. Maybe try to, turn the U.S. into a second Vatican. I don't know, or hey, they screwed up their own country with the potato blight. They're probably going to import the same same blight here in America. And the Irish were horribly discriminated against, for a long time. And when I was teaching history at the college level, one of the things that I would show my students, I would show them a photo montage that had all of these Irish attack ads and all of these anti-Irish banners and signs. You would see businesses post these help wanted signs, and they would say now hiring, help wanted, and then in parentheses below it would say no Irish need apply.
Right.
I mean, this was the extent of the discrimination. We're saying, hey, we really want help, and you can be white, black, Hispanic, you can be Asian, you can be Native American for all we care, but if you're Irish, get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
And not only that, you also had the Irish become the subject of some very hurtful slurs that have actually stood the test of time, and they're used today, but not necessarily as a pejorative. For instance, if you have two children who are born to the same parents, and they're born either within 12 months of each other, or they're born within or if they're born within the same calendar year, The popular adage for children who are described as such is Irish twins. Well, the whole term Irish twins came about because there was a stereotype that, the Irish really like to reproduce and they multiply like rabbits. So, if you were not a biological twin, either an identical twin or a fraternal twin, but you were really close in age with your next youngest or eldest sibling, you were an Irish twin. And an Irish kiss was essentially a
Yeah.
euphemism for punching somebody in the face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Because-
I
because-
have to say, it didn't just happen in this country.
Yeah.
Growing up in different countries, Kenya, England, South Africa, Irish jokes were like,
Oh, big.
I mean, I remember like as a kid, the one joke going around was, how did an Irishman blow up a car? He put his lips on the muffler. Like
Yeah.
that, I mean, I mean, it's weird that you
There's
bring
so
this up
many.
because now, like, I have all these Irish jokes go to my head and I'm like, that's not funny, but it is. But it was at the time, like, just because, I mean, listen, I was always the, ugly American in school. So I got all of the jokes on me, but it was like, I always just thought it was funny because I was a kid and I just thought, oh, that's just funny. But I didn't take it as against an Irish person. You could put any person in there. It was just funny to me. But really, now that I realize that the Irish got nailed because they were in South Africa. I think if they were in South Africa, they had to be in Australia and New Zealand too. But I mean, England was not nice about the Irish. When growing up there, I always thought the Irish, like, just
about the religion.
I always read like Nancy's reading this historical novel. Like, I read so many novels where the Irish came in and they were kind of they had to work like doubly hard.
Well, almost like slaves.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously. I know when my brother and I are 13 months apart. Think about that. And I remember being called an Irish twin.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's like, hello, I don't know what happened. We look identical. We do look like twins, or we did anyway. He's passed on now. But I remember the term Irish twins. My grandmother is British, and she used to always say things about the Irish. So there is a thing, but I think it stems from Catholic versus Protestant. I think it's a religious thing where all that starts. Because I mean, even the novel I'm reading now said that when the Irish get mad, the tips of their ears glow red. And I'm like, come on. So it's funny. And they're like, the tips of their ears turn red before their face turns red, whereas the British, their face turns red.
Really?
Yeah, they're like, when they get mad, their faces turn red, but the Irish, the tips of their ears turn red. I'm like, this is so weird. But it
I don't know.
boils,
I don't know
it
about
does
that.
boil down. I know, well, I'm not saying it's true. This is just, it's a historic novel. But I think it boils down to Protestant versus Catholic. I think it's a religious thing. I really do.
Mike, what do you say about this? Oh my gosh, are we going to get into
Yeah, we're gonna
religious
get in
war now?
trouble. No, but
Well,
I'm not saying who's right or wrong. I just think that's the difference.
I'm sure the Protestantism versus Catholicism is a factor in there. There are really as many reasons as the day is long about why certain groups of people can't get along, or certainly there's a whole laundry list of reasons behind why the Irish don't like the British and vice versa. What I've found in a lot of the more contemporary case studies that I've looked at is that when you have this sectarian violence, a lot of it really starts with territorialism, and then religion gets thrown into the mix, and I think, for lack of a better term, it becomes a convenient add-on. Now, I mean, sometimes religion is the start of it, but I've noticed that as we gravitate towards more modern times, a lot of it's mostly about territory, and religion is just something that gets thrown into there. It's like, once you've made up your mind that you don't like somebody and that you're committed to misunderstanding them, you're gonna look for any reason under the
An
sun that you
excuse.
can to try to keep
Yeah.
that division going. Well, it's like, well, I already don't like this person, and I don't like them because of A, B, and C. Oh, they have D, E, and F too. Hey, you know what, man? I want to use that to pile on, and
Mm. So
that's what I
religion
think is
would be
happening.
the
Yeah,
excuse.
yeah. So and
Hmm.
I think religion does
Yeah.
have a lot to do with the has a lot to do with the split in this case, and I think that's really just a
Mm,
function of the spirit of the Reformation, because
mm,
you know you had the big split on mainland Europe, starting with the Reformation. You had Martin Luther in his 95
mhm,
Theses. You had then you had the Lutheran Church, and from there you get
mhm,
the
Mhm.
Calvinists, and then we have all the off branches of Protestantism, to include the Methodists and the Presbyterians, and then and then the Church of England, which actually didn't grow out of the Protestant movement on mainland Europe, but was more having to do with the whole comedy of errors behind King Henry, Mary and Catherine of Aragon,
mm. Yeah.
and basically the England just cutting ties with the Pope and said, okay, well, Archbishop of Canterbury, congratulations, you're now the head of the Church of England. So we like these particular Catholic traditions. We're going to keep these, but we're going to get rid of some others.
Hmm.
And I think really just that schism between England and the Pope is really what just added
Mhm,
fuel to the fire of the split between the Irish and the British. And you see that manifest itself in other ways too. I mean, you had the French Catholics who were going after the French Huguenots, and
Mhm.
there's even a lot of things that the Catholic Church did at the time that they still really can't walk away from. Now, I mean, not that we charge that to God. We don't charge that to Jesus. We charge that to the people who were making the bad decisions at the time. But
Right. Yeah.
It's
I
political.
want to touch on that
the bad
because
rap was kind of deserved at the time, because the Catholic Church had just come off the Spanish Inquisition. They'd come off
Mm,
they had come off the selling of indulgences. So there
Mm.
were and the French Catholics going after the French Huguenots is just another example. But there were definitely reasons for why the Protestant movement um, arose when it did. And it's painful for me to say that, because I'm a Catholic myself, and it's there were the wrong people in charge making the wrong decisions that just couldn't help but take two separate parties and two separate entities and keep forcing them in different directions.
Yeah, I think this is such an important conversation because we all have our different beliefs on religion, right? And of what we want to choose, which religion makes sense to us, right? And then there's God and spirit. And everybody can choose whether, who, what, and where. Everybody's got their beliefs. But I think a lot of times we look at religion and go, oh, well, religion caused the war. So it's like God caused the war. And so therefore, a lot of times people don't believe in God or religion or any of that because of war, because God gets the rap on war. If God did this, there wouldn't be, he created the wars then, right? So it's kind
oh,
of interesting what you're bringing up because it's human beings
Yeah,
doing the
and we
wars.
have free
And
will.
we
Yeah.
and I think you're right, Nancy. It's like this excuse. We're already pissed off with this person for doing this, so now I'm going to tack this on and use this because the greater community that is around you believes
mhm,
this. So therefore, I can rally the troops better because that's our community. Versus I'm pissed off with you, so I'm gonna have a war with you, me and me, me and me and me and you. You know what I mean? It's like a singular versus the community behind you. Whereas the community and church was one back then. Like your neighborhood church was you and your family and everybody in the neighborhood kind of thing way back when, right? It was kind of like, and then now in this country and around the world, we can go to a synagogue down the street, a few blocks. You could go to, a Catholic church down the street. And I think that's beautiful and great. But I think back then it was like, we're all this. And it was almost like how we are now with political parties. We're doing the same thing. Uh-oh, did I go astray, Mike? But it's kind of true, right? Isn't it kind of true? This is
Well,
human
yeah,
nature.
it's it's part of that destination, where we started with all these divisions, the natural and probable consequence of that is, it spills into secular politics.
Yeah.
The way I was brought up, my parents moved every year, and my mom sent us on Sundays to the nearest church, no matter what denomination it was. So I've been to pretty much every kind of church, and you would go to that church every Sunday for 6 months to a year, and then we would move, and then we go to a different church for another 6 months to a year. And I remember their teachings, and they were all pretty similar as far as the 10 Commandments. Other than that, the stories and how they taught it and the lessons you were supposed to bring home were totally different. And so, I found it to be very interesting, and it gave me an interest in history, because I really want to know, like, why are we who we are? And why do we do what we do? Why do we go to war? Who are we fighting and what for? And then living in different countries, it got more confusing. So I look at humanity as, who are you really as a person? What do you really stand for? Because I found through the churches that they were almost identical, but they took stabs at each other, which in a way would be against the 10 Commandments, like do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It went out the window. And so I'm not being against the religion, but I'm just saying, I think what's written and then how people deliver it is two different things.
That's called life and growth and
Just
learning.
gonna get so in trouble for that.
And no, but we all learn and grow, right? And so when we look at war, you got to look. Let's go to
it's like,
World War II. We got to look at what World War II. Like you even think about Ukraine right now. You can't expect Ukraine not to stand up and say, "Screw you," back to the Russians. Like, we're gonna kick your
no,
butts. Right?
but
And the
then
American and
every
not jump
country is
in.
blessed by some religion.
Right,
Somebody comes out and blesses them.
but somebody started a war, and you can't just sit back and hope nothing's going to happen.
Yeah. No, you
Nothing's
have to take steps, but you know what I'm saying is,
right.
um,
Oh, Mike, we're getting in
yeah,
trouble. Are we getting in trouble,
you're
Mike?
so gonna get in trouble.
Not with
But
me.
no,
No,
but I think this is
okay, but
important.
okay, so Hitler was blessed by
I guess.
religion. Yes.
Oh,
And yeah, he got blessings from people in power. So
that's what you
I'm
meant.
like,
Okay.
you
Yeah,
know,
no, I mean, he was
so
obviously
getting
one
it
of
in
the
trouble.
most evil. I mean, I'm gonna put, he's evil, and I'm gonna put Putin next. I say Putin instead of Putin, because Putin,
Putin.
I'm sorry, I just like to say it that way, but like what we do as human beings, everybody, none of us are perfect, and it's all about a level of growth and working to be better. And then there are some people that are just horrible, and unfortunately we have to take them out because they dirty the water, like, they dirty the bath water. We want clean bath water. And some people don't play well in the bathtub. As kids, you put the kids in the bathtub together and they play with the rubber duckies, and then there's one that will go like and be like a total brat, and then there's the one that really does something bad, and then you go, you got to watch this kid over here that stabbed the rubber ducky. Why is the kid stabbing
Dude,
the rubber ducky? And if
who's
someone didn't
stabbing the
figure-
rubber ducky.
well, no. So, but if no one noticed the kid stabbing the rubber ducky and what was going on, you never know what goes on, So there, I'm just saying that it is weird how human beings do things, and this goes back to it. I mean, I'm going to go back to the potato famine and reel us back in before we
Okay.
get every person on the planet emailing us that listens to the show and yelling at us for this, but it's true. You can't blame God for what we do as human beings. It's a life cycle of
No.
change and learning. Okay. And some of us just did really bad things. And I'm sorry, but you defend and say, screw you. Like, you can't kill someone you got to protect your community, but that's where religion comes in. I think Mike's got this amazing viewpoint on this. And Mike, I think that happens not just with the Irish wars, I think it goes a long way, but people really attached to belief systems. That's the first place, is religion is that's the biggest belief system right? And when you think about it, that is the biggest in.
Well, I mean, that was the one of the biggest foundations of early modern society. That's really what I mean. That's kind of what communities were built around. Particularly when you look at what was known as the biblical world at the time. You had the land of Judea, and you had Canaan, and even ancient Egypt. They all tended to congregate around their culture, and the pantheon of gods, and even the Greeks, and the Greek gods that worked their way into Roman mythology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, also looking back too, Mike, when you think about religious beliefs, I mean, we've also passed beliefs on to indigenous people in history.
True.
And that's a whole other thing too. It's like, we obviously want this connection, the soul connection, right? To the greater spirit, the greater God, the greater being of why we are here. We all want that. That's why I go back to that question at the beginning, is like, why do we want to survive? What is it? When you're going through such hell, what is it?
Right.
I think it's all connected it's like a weird full circle. I'm not trying to be really weird here, but it's true. When you think about, we're going to fight, we're going to go through this really brutal, bloody, muddy, horrible, deadly thing. But at the same time, we have this spiritual thing going on too, that keeps you living, but we're also using that as a token. It's weird. You know what I mean? That's
Right.
and if you think even wouldn't you say the Gulf Wars are part of that too? Desert Storm and all of that kind of ties into, or no?
To an extent. I mean, I think it's more about, it was more about regional balances of power, and, not reintroducing the brand of, expeditionary totalitarianism like Hitler and Stalin were doing.
Mhm.
Right. But I
Yeah.
think people got mad at different religions over it because of
Well,
the Islam thing and all of that.
People
So
always
then
do
that
that.
brings in, no matter what, I just feel like every war has a religious side to it.
Well, it's interesting that people feel when it comes to religion that you must believe what they believe. Instead of like, okay, you believe this and I believe that, and let it go.
Oh, that's a good point.
I no, it's interesting because I mean, we've lived in several different countries and we've um, talked to so many people, obviously, with the radio show. The idea that if you don't believe my way, hit the highway, as
mhm.
opposed to, oh, that's interesting. Let me think about that. Let me
Well, let
look
me
at
make it very clear. I
from
don't know
mm,
anything. So you can email
no,
me
but
all you want. I don't know.
mm, no, but just look at it from a different point of view, you know.
Mm,
Just look at it from a different point of view and see what in your heart makes you react and what doesn't. Yeah, you know, I feel like
mm,
oh boy, I have to choose the words carefully, that you should protect yourself from being brainwashed
yeah, or
Mhm.
hurt.
if from any degree, whether it be teachers, religions, or what have you, is that somewhere inside yourself, you find your true self and go with that,
Mm.
as opposed to, I read this, so now I believe it.
Mm.
I mean, how many times have history books been written and then they corrected themselves
Oh,
because they
let's just
found a
look at
new,
social. Let's just look at
they
social
found a new
media today.
fossil, they found a new this, they found something, they found more evidence. So the history books are like, at the time it was written, they believed this.
Mm.
Doesn't make it true. That's what they believed on the evidence they had at that time. Expect it to change in the future.
Mm.
I mean, it's like, so we don't want something new to happen that changes the beliefs we were taught, as opposed to embracing, oh, wow, hey, look at that. That's now new.
Mm.
Like they just found,
Mhm.
I have to say it, Lisa, you're going to get mad, but I have to say it. They just found fossils of what they call a penguin that is, and it's the
The giant
size of
penguin.
Shaq O'Neal. Okay. This is like over
It's a
6
giant
foot
penguin.
penguin, a giant
Nancy's
penguin.
excited about this.
No, I love dinosaurs. I do. I
But
like the
but
history
this
of
but
watching
but this
the actual evidence of the bones.
well, this is interesting. You're talking about
Okay.
natural history, so we always have these natural history
But
findings, but
but
we also
but
have them for human history, where we find
exactly.
humans and
But
the oldest humans
so
and
but
also
you hmm,
concentration
it
camps,
was
things like
if
that we didn't know
six
about.
months ago you told somebody there was a 6 foot penguin, they'd like say you're nuts. But now we have evidence that was a 6 foot penguin.
Watch
Now, I
out,
don't
Mike.
know why
They're
I
coming
don't
to
know why
Minnesota.
but why did they shrink? I don't
All
know.
right, we'll have a
Yeah.
sequel to
But
Happy Feet.
Yeah, I know. And wait, there was
see,
there
no,
was
I
a
just think
there was a famine.
so.
But
Okay,
I
I'm
want to
just
I want to
trying to
go back
say
to, yeah, I mean things change
things
history wise.
change. And so embrace the change. Don't get so locked up in your viewpoints that you can't embrace change. Like if you get new information, embrace it as opposed to oppose it.
Well, I want to go
And
I want to go back to Mike on this because when you think about history changing, I mean, when we were taught about Irish American history, because I'm trying to circle this back around before we get a gazillion emails.
okay, sorry.
Going back to that, like, no changes. Like, I don't think when I was in high school, we knew that much about Irish Americans or Irish getting out. We knew there was a potato famine. We knew that part, but it was like there was a potato famine and people were hungry and some died and some moved on. That's about probably it that we had in our textbooks. And
Mhm.
I think it's like only maybe it's just my age over the last 20 years
Mm.
that we're really starting to understand. And movies have done, I mean, novels I've read so much over the years of the Irish were so feisty and really resilient human beings to still be
Mhm.
here. They went through so much to still be here, and I have a huge respect for the Irish. And by the way, they tell really better jokes than a lot of people. Um, I mean, I was talking about jokes earlier about them, but they could beat you to it. And if you think about the West and the Southwest, the Chinese did so much in dynamite and blowing things up and the railroads and
Mhm.
everything, but the Irish
Right.
were pretty much a lot of those prospectors who said, oh, hell yes, gotten those terms like that accent, they'll go west. And they went through a lot of the moving west. And that was brutal. That was brutal. And there's many historic hotels with ghosts of Irish prospectors. We've stayed in a lot of them, but their history is huge in the West. But going back, Mike, do you think we've kind of dropped the ball in Irish history in schools over the years? Because I know you taught over the years and in different ages.
Right.
Or is it
You
just
know,
me that it's just kind of been whitewashed over? Like that's a term. Like kind of
well,
like,
I think it hasn't really gotten as much attention as it deserves,
Mm.
because the subtext that I think a lot of modern historians would use to approach it would be, hey, uh, it's not just identifiable people of color who have been targeted with discrimination. It's also been the Irish who,
Mhm.
were as demonstrably white as the next person. But when they came over here from the potato famine, a lot of them came with the spirit of optimism, saying, okay, well, the Americans are our kindred spirits
Mhm.
because we have a common enemy in the British. They hate the Brits as much as we do.
Mhm.
So they're going to welcome us with open arms. And the reception that a lot of Irishmen got when they came here was much decidedly different in the sense that they were seeing, okay, well, yeah, the Irishmen are white, but they're kind of off-white. A lot of them have
Mm.
red hair, they talk funny,
Yeah.
and they're Catholic. Whereas
Mhm.
America at this time is still predominantly Protestant, and
Mhm.
they're seen as they're looked upon with suspicion, and they also are not looked upon necessarily as allies. They're either tacit agents for the Pope, or they're just people who are going to ruin America, like Ireland itself was ruined by the potato famine. Not that lay at the fault of any one particular Irishman. It's just
No,
they were seen,
just what
yeah,
happened.
they were not welcomed as graciously as the English and the German immigrants were. But
Mhm.
the the rabbit hole goes deeper, and there is a bit of a redemption arc here too, because you know uh, the Irish were horribly targeted with a lot of institutional discrimination. That you would see these help wanted signs in businesses across America that would say, now hiring help wanted, but no Irish need apply.
mhm,
I mean,
Yeah.
imagine that you have a whole
Mm.
group of people who are ethnically white by every sense of the measure, and yet they're being excluded because of their ancestral heritage. Now, not only that, they also became the target of a lot of pejoratives and slurs that still stand today, although they've lost a lot of the pejorative connotation. For instance, Irish twins
Mhm.
refers to siblings who were born within the same calendar year or who were born at least 12 months apart. Well, the
yeah,
term Irish twin originated because the stereotype was, the Irish, they like to multiply like rabbits.
Mhm.
And then of course there was an Irish kiss, which was a dignified way of saying, hey, I am going to punch somebody in the face. But the redemption arc here was that a lot of the discriminatory attitudes against the Irish subsided in a lot of ways. Not only in terms of the prospectors that Nancy had mentioned, but a lot of the early Irishmen who came here, a lot of them, especially in New England, because they couldn't find a lot of jobs in the private sector, a lot of them became cops and they became firefighters. And if you look at the historical rosters of any one of those major police departments in New England, be it the Boston PD, NYPD, or the FDNY, you'll see that a disproportionate number of those cops and firefighters have Irish surnames. Their names like Kennedy and Sullivan and O'Leary and O'Reilly and Hennessy. All men who have an Irish background. And at some point, people started to say, well, hey, these Irishmen are taking that same level of intensity that we know them for, and they're keeping our streets safe. They're serving, they're protecting. They're putting out these house fires, and they gained a lot more credibility in the throes of the Civil War, because you had those Irish brigades, and where either all of the soldiers or an overwhelming majority of them were Irish, and man, they were just fierce on the battlefield. And people started to say, well, hey, you know what, the Irishmen, they're loyal to their communities, they're loyal to their countrymen. You know what, maybe we were wrong about them all along. And you just go on to have a list of Irish Americans and Irish immigrants who have contributed so greatly to American history. So the redemption arc is there. And I think that's what makes the story end on a positive note.
Yeah. And also, what about Irish who have fought in wars too?
Yeah,
Like
that's right.
the Mexican-American War, the Irish stood up on our side.
That's right.
Listen, if you're going to get in a battle, I want an Irish. I know, like, I have Irish friends. And listen, I've seen bar brawls go down. And if you're going to side on anyone, you side on the Irish, because they will take you out. I'm serious. Now, if you get an Italian and an Irish, I'm running. I'm just running because someone's going to blow up. But you know what I mean? But, I went to school with a lot of Irish in South Africa, and yeah, you don't mess with the Irish, because they have a good temper too. Like, not all, but I witnessed that, you know what I mean? But at the same time, most passionate people and sweet, kind, when I just wish we didn't fight over things, but that's the way the world is. But I think you're really right. And when you think about, the Northeast, I know Massachusetts, Boston, but right now we're recording out of Columbia, South Carolina, Mike. And I was looking up Irish history and immigration here. Lo and behold, this is one of the top places they moved to. Charleston, South Carolina too, Savannah, Georgia. So the Irish took care of the coast, basically. They went from Boston all the way down. Some said that we want a warmer climate, we're going south. So if you're going to Charleston and Georgia, like Savannah, Georgia, they got into military too, right? Those are such military cities. Yeah. If in your research, have you come across military folk that you're like interested in that were Irish?
Well, yeah. As a matter of fact, we can point to the Kennedy family. JFK. And not only John F. Kennedy, but his big brother Joe Kennedy. Who was unfortunately a casualty of war, and you can even throw Bobby Kennedy in there too, because he served during the last year of the Second World War. So you have that Irish resilience there, and apart from war, but I think very closely related to it is the sport of pugilism. You know, you had quite a few famous boxers of Irish descent. Billy Conn being one of them. You know, the heavyweight boxer who you know
Mhm.
could hold his own
Mhm.
against the likes of Joe Louis. Uh, yeah, you know,
Yeah.
there are several people out there, either first generation Irishmen or you know people of Irish descent who
Mhm.
you know have stood up and done great things for America.
When you say
Yeah.
about boxing, that's always been the beginning thing
Mhm.
of
So,
novels is the Irish coming over and boxing to make money
Hmm.
to
mm,
survive here. Is that a true thing? I mean, I think there was even that
mhm.
movie with Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise, I think when they were married or
Yeah,
something.
far and away.
Yeah, that was a good
Mhm.
movie.
It
Um,
was. It was.
and I just wonder about
Mm,
that. Like, is that a true thing? Because here you get off a ship and then you get into a boxing match like you
mhm.
people do with, fighting cocks and everything.
They're
But
actually called pugilists.
oh, that's a
Wow.
big word for
Yeah.
me.
Mm,
Um, but like
Pugilists.
they do that, like they get off the ship and that people bet on you and and it seemed that that was a way for the Irish to get some money like quickly. If you're a male, and then if you're a woman, well, you know what was happening with women. Is that kind of the true thing, Mike?
Well, there is a shred of truth to it. Yeah, I mean that is how some early
Mhm.
Irish immigrants were making money. You know, they were making money fighting, and
Mhm.
you know, then you also, I'm sure you probably familiar with the film The Gangs of New York.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, that
Mm,
epic film with Daniel Day-Lewis and Leo DiCaprio.
Oh yeah,
You know,
yeah.
mhm.
they were, they were, you had you had folks who were making money with their fists and you know unfortunately
Mhm.
taking that to a point where they were making money running the block. um,
Yeah.
but the flip side of that was that yeah, you know, a lot of these same Irishmen were on the right side of the law as well, you know, and they were enforcing the law too.
Well, they had to know it from the other
Mm,
side too, right? To be able to
Right.
enforce it. Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking about Daniel Day-Lewis. Remember My Left Foot? God, he did a
mhm.
lot of good movies, like Last of the
Yeah,
Mohicans and stuff. Sorry, I went into
my
movie.
my dad was a pugilist, as he
Yeah.
used to say. He didn't like the term boxer. When he went out of high school, he went into boxing. And he taught me the word is pugilist.
Pugilist,
That's what he
yeah.
said. He's a pugilist, not a
Mm.
boxer. And
Oh,
I
wow.
don't know. I mean, I think it's the same thing, but apparently a pugilist is a boxer with a brain.
Oh, I thought you said a
What?
pugilist. I didn't
That's
know
what
a
no, a
pugilist.
pugilist.
Huh.
P-U-G-U, pugilist.
Okay. Okay.
Mm,
Hmm.
And
A new thing. Hmm.
I don't know. That's what he called it, pugilist, Pugilist. And it was a pugilist to him was a boxer who got paid for boxing, and he
Well,
got paid for boxing.
oh, so it was professional. You're a professional
Yeah,
then, instead
mm,
of being a street
he
fighter.
didn't get that far,
Hmm.
uh, because I guess he wasn't that good at it. I don't know, but he used to tell me, "Don't say boxer, say pugilist."
It's like don't
I,
say pirate, it's a privateer.
yeah, he just said it did that.
Hmm.
I don't know. He just said that you don't use the word boxer, you use pugilist. But I've never heard anybody say pugilist but him.
Mike, have you heard of that? Have you heard of that at all? This is new to me, you know.
That there's quite a swath of the population that prefers pugilism and pugilist over boxer.
Wow, I've
Yeah,
never heard this term. Like, here's our family history on radio. It's
I
usual.
know. I never thought
Nancy
of
likes
it.
to just dig up our dirt on shows. It's great.
No, but well, I,
Pugil, well, it's
mm,
a classy way of saying we're gonna beat you up, but we're not in the streets, right? That means we're not in the streets, you know. this is a
I don't know. I
professional
just
thing.
know what my dad told me.
Wow.
He goes,
All right. So,
pugilist.
so here it is. Mike Guardia's next segment is going to be on Hollywood celebrities like Lee Marvin and
Mhm.
Ronald Reagan and Clark Gable, who served in the military and at war. That's going to be our next show. Every first Monday here on bigblendradio.com. Also, keep up with Mike at mikeguardia.com. His latest books are, again, Coyote Recon, The Forgotten Wars of Colonel J.D. Vanderpool. That's why I'm so excited about Lee Marvin with this, because I feel like there's this,
cool.
like, there's parallel lines with these guys. Also, but obviously, though, like, J.D. Vanderpool really went off and did this whole military career of all these other things. And then Lee Marvin went off and did acting and singing, but there's like a connectivity there. So I'm very excited about this next interview with Mike. Steve Schneikert will be joining us on that too. I just talked to him. Mike, he'll be on the show, our Hollywood historian. So we're going to get both sides. Here's the military and then the Hollywood history. This is going to be such a cool show. But the other book of Mike's latest books is the Combat Diaries, True Stories from the Front Lines of World War II. I think that's an important book for people to read because we're losing our World War II heroes. Mike, we're really kind of at that tail end, aren't we? Like with our World War II heroes. It's like a generational shift is happening on all fronts, even on the boomer side. It sucks. It just sucks. You know, so I think it's wonderful that you're capturing everyone's stories, and we're excited for your next books. So you want to give everyone a sneak preview of what's happening next?
Yeah, so they can, among the titles they can expect to see in the near future, there is Sarajevo at Dawn, which talks about the spy war in Bosnia, and how the U.S. Army was running counterintelligence agents against the Bosnians, the Serbs, and the Croats, and how these army counter intel agents were supposed to be half soldier and half James Bond, and then there's another one that deals with the combat engineers in Vietnam, and I think that's a vitally important story because when I say combat engineering, I don't mean somebody who is doing calculations and constructions. None of the more fancy aspects of engineering, I guess you would say, but combat engineering is in people who lay landmines, and people who set obstacles for the enemies to run into, and people who set barbed wire traps, and people who have to clear landmines. It's a very nitty gritty job that is right there alongside the infantry and the tanks and the artillery, but I don't think it gets as much press or PR as it should.
I so agree with you because I've really often wondered, like, okay, when we've gone to different historic battlefields and we hear the stories, like one battlefield, Lisa, where was that where the homestead house was like 20 feet from the battleground?
Montecito. Montecito in DC, Washington, not Washington, Maryland, outside of DC, very close. Well, yeah, nearby in Maryland. Montecito is part of like
it's nuts.
A series of farmhouses, basically.
Yeah.
And the family, the wife would take the kids downstairs into the basement area of the farmhouse, and it's in the Civil War history, and here they're doing the Civil War outside your bedroom window, literally. I mean, you've got to think like, World War II was like that too, where, you're being bombed. What's happening in Ukraine right now? It's like, what do you tell your kids? How do you protect your kids? But this is your own home. You're on this pristine piece of land. It's a quiet living. You're working hard. Your kids are working the land. It's back in the days when people had more kids to work the land. And then next thing you know, you're being invaded with a bunch of people that are blowing each other up on your doorstep. And
then we were in one Tyrone Plantation, where Ulysses
Well,
Grant was in the lower floor while the war was happening. I mean, we've been
and his
in
donkey would
places
pee
where,
on charcoal downstairs.
yeah,
And you can stay in a
it-
room there now. Anyway, that's a
yeah.
whole other
No,
deal.
I mean, it makes history come alive if you travel and go to these historic places when you
Mm.
can, especially taking your children, because history in school can be like,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah.
and but if you take
Oh,
them to the places where things happened,
mm.
it comes alive. And I
I,
really hope.
I wanted to touch on that about going to places. Mike, you're
Mm,
in Minnesota. We're gonna come
Mhm.
see you. We're coming. We're coming
mm,
up north,
Good.
and I'm scared because we have to drive through snow in the next
oh,
couple days. But
mm,
on a somber note, I know we are leaving on a high note, but on a somber note too. I believe you lost a loved one from one of your books that was living near you. Am I right on that?
oh,
That in the Combat
Yes.
Diaries?
Yes. So, and it was rather
mm,
sudden, but not necessarily a surprise. But Marty Romano, he was the
mm,
he was the PT boat crewman. He was on PT 306 in the Mediterranean, and after the war, he settled in Minneapolis, and he built a lot of the he was a civil engineer by trade, and he ended
mm,
up building a lot of the landmarks here in the city that people either walk across or they drive through every day. Um, yeah, he has his legacy written, you know, all over the Twin Cities, just for the bridges and the tunnels that he was responsible for building. And at the age of 98 no less, he passed away. And he was the
wow.
last surviving crew member of PT 306. And
Mm,
had plans to attend his funeral, but unfortunately, I got terribly ill that weekend that we
Oh,
were supposed to
mm,
bury him. But I was there in spirit, and I'm actually for one of the upcoming World War II roundtables. I'm going to be given I'm going to be given a presentation on his life and career,
mm,
because he's one of that greatest generation, and
mm,
he's one who really embodies the spirit of the times. And yeah, we
mm,
need more folks like him around.
mm.
yeah.
I remember him being as,
Mm,
even before the book came out, you talked about him, and I was saying, like, when we come up, we'll go see like his bridges and hopefully even meet him. And I'm so sorry. And that's the thing when you talk about this greatest generation, and we talk about war today. We went all over the place. Obviously, we always do
yeah.
that, right, Mike? But I mean, how can let's have a discussion on why we kill each other, right? In war,
Well,
but that's the truth, and that's something we explore on these shows. But it's when something is wrong in World War II and World War One, those were two wars that were so people put
crazy.
themselves out there, not even knowing better about skills, right? There, so many people just showed up, and I think that's something in life that we need to embody more, is to show up. And all these, this has been a wild show, and so we appreciate your time, Mike, and the people that you interview and write about their legacy, their lives. I think you're doing important work. We always talk about that on the show, but when we
Well,
lose
they
their
shouldn't
life,
be forgotten.
they're not forgotten. So
Yeah.
I encourage people to go buy your books and read these stories, because they're inspirational. We lose these heroes, right? And sometimes we don't know these heroes exist, but that's what Mike does. He introduces us to these heroes, and may they not just be forgotten. May we remember them, maybe read about them and be inspired by them to show up in life,
And,
period.
and
Not
not
necessarily
and
even in the military, just to show up.
But then it's also good to read about them not 100 years later.
No, no.
You
Let's
know,
move.
to read
Yeah,
about them now.
and to connect with those now, today.
Mhm.
So thank you again, everyone. MikeGuardia.com is the website to keep up with Mike. Keep up with us here every first Monday. We chat with Mike. So keep up with us at bigblendradio.com. If you're listening on our Big Daily Blend show, our music and conversation show, we're going to have to rope Mike in on one of those crazy shows with us.
Yeah.
We're going to get him on one of those.
Mhm.
That show is fun. We play music. We talk about rabbit holes. Like basically that's all our radio shows are, big rabbit holes. But he is, so if you're listening on that show, we get to play over and over from Madonna. That's his pick. So enjoy that. So thanks so much, Mike.
Thank you, ladies. Always a pleasure to be here.